Absolutely. And I know that even in my journey now, I feel like I'm extremely intuitive. And as soon as I get the nudge, I move with it because I just know and I trust. And I've had enough synchronicities
Mm.
to help prove that concept, right? But in the beginning, it was really difficult for me. And especially when it came to finances, because I was so trained to be responsible and to have a steady income and to have the biweekly paychecks and the 401k and the bonuses. And I needed that financial security. So when I went on my journey and my whole body was like, nope, you're not going back to work. You're going to go to India and you're going to explore this modality. You're going to go back to Bali. My whole body and mind were very disconnected in that process. But that's when I really relied on the breath work to keep me very consistent in the vision and the life that I wanted to create. And so now in my practice with Hypno-Breathwork, the last vocal cue for every session we guide is what is your one next intuitive action step?
Welcome to the Soulful Sound Podcast, where you will find conscious, inspiring content to support your healing and transformation. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation for you to be part of our community, where more insightful conversations await to guide you to heal, grow, and thrive. Simply click the subscribe button. It means the world to me. Your support, your comments, everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. I'm so excited to be on this adventure with you, and your subscription is a valuable part of making it all happen. Thank you so much for joining, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are. Welcome back, everyone, to an amazing new episode on the Soulful Sound Podcast. I'm joined by the beautiful Francesca Sipma, who is the author of Unblock Your Purpose, Breathwork, Intuition, and Flow State. Yummy. Now, we're going to talk about all things around that. And I just want to tell you that she is the founder and CEO of Mastry, the creator of Hypno-Breathwork, and an international speaker who offers courses and training programs for C-suite executives. We have worldwide, renowned producers, celebrities, artists, athletes. There's so many beautiful things going on right now. And she's led sessions for Snap and Upwork and Athletic Brewing. And her work has been featured by Bloomberg, Forbes, NBC, and ABC. So much yumminess to share. I can't wait to jump in. Welcome, welcome, Francesca. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Amazing. So I love kind of jumping in with a little bit about you, your personal story, and what got you into this amazing work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so I actually used to work in advertising and marketing, which is a pretty far departure from the wellness journey that I've gone on. And I had met a lot of my career goals in New York City and working on big global brands. And I realized when I sort of climbed the top of that mountain that I felt pretty empty. I felt insatiable. It was like every time I got a promotion or I got a new account or I had a new big project that I finished, I was already on to the next thing. And every time I had a really amazing trip booked, I was ready for the next destination. And I was just very rarely present. And I noticed that something just felt disconnected, where I was never fulfilled. And that's what sort of was the catalyst for me to go deeper and to go inward and start to explore my values and what would truly light me up. And through a series of, signs from the universe, I found myself in Bali on a 7-day breathwork retreat, and that completely changed my life.
That's beautiful. And, I'm really glad to hear you speak about those moments where, you go from one thing to the other, because I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of, I've got a goal, I've got something that I want to achieve, done, next, done, next. How
Yeah.
do we bring ourselves back into that present moment? Or how have you done it where you can really sit with the celebration and acknowledgement of the achievement before moving on to the next, I guess, arena or step?
Yeah, I think first it's observing if the goals are even in alignment, or if it's something that we're doing for societal recognition, or if we're still trying to prove our worth to our parents, or, if it's for material gain. So that's the first thing to do, is to figure out if the path you're on and the highest level of success that you can gain from that path will actually make you happy. Because I find that usually when it's about the accolades, then you're just chasing a hamster wheel. But if you're actually fueled by the process, so the difference for me now is I love the creative journey. I love being of service. I love seeing the breakthrough. So every day is exciting for me. Conversations like this are joyous to me. So it's less about hitting those actual markers that will make me happy in a month or once a quarter or once a year, but finding the things that light you up on a daily basis and then just being able to really recognize that and be mindful and grateful of that daily.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it sounds like bringing the happiness and the joy into the daily process so that we're not chasing that, as you said, that kind of hamster wheel. Very often in my work, I used to use the phrase a lot, which I'm refining as I evolve. But I use the phrase, not the word, that joy is my inner navigation, because a lot of everything that I've chosen in my life, having worked only 11 months of my life for someone else, I've always worked for myself. I always went where joy would be, where inside of me I'd feel that kind of turn on and that like, yes, this is purposeful, this means something. And then through that, of course, lots of different things happen. So I'm sharing that with the question to kind of follow for you, like, how was that process for you in that everyday moments, noticing, is it gratitude, is it joy? What's your inner navigation, if you like?
Do you feel called to use your voice and sound in a healing capacity? Learn how to use your voice therapeutically to facilitate healing and well-being. Whether you want to go deeper in your own healing, support family and friends, or build a thriving sound healing practice, this training is for you. This worldwide virtual training offers theory, practice, resources, and support on your path to becoming a qualified sound healer.
You know, I'll be really honest with you on this one because I feel like even when we are aware that we should be present and grateful and joyous, we can still get stuck in our old patterns and in our old ways. And I found myself there a few weeks ago with the book and with the launch. It became a goal that I had to achieve, and I had to knock out this many places in the press tour and podcast and all these things. And I was getting so wrapped up in being productive about it that I was losing the joy and the fulfillment. And I was a bit in my ego about what I needed to accomplish. And I took it to a breathwork session, and it was really interesting journey because in breathwork, it allows you to be a lot more self-reflective and a lot more self-aware and tune into the present versus living in the future or in the past. And in that session, I saw sort of my career trajectory and how I had always met my goals, but I did it with such force. I did it on my timeline instead of learning the lessons and accumulating the skills and letting myself grow along the way. And so in the breathwork, I saw I'm going to have everything I want with this book. It's all going to happen for me. And I'm on the journey, and to enjoy the process instead of just waiting for a specific number or for a specific goal to be attained. And so for me, a lot of times it's taking it to breathwork and allowing myself to slow down and to see where I'm at and feel into my body of what feels good. So it might be joy, it might be gratitude, but for me, it's often a sense of peace. Like that feels easy. It doesn't feel like I'm pushing, I'm forcing. And that's when I know that I'm back in alignment and I'm on the right path.
Now, what's really beautiful, and I know that we're going to dive into this more because your book has breathwork, intuition, and flow. So you spoke about breathwork just now. I'd love to know perhaps your definition of intuition and then also your definition of flow and what made you marry those three together. Talk a little bit about that.
Wow, what a great question. So intuition is your inner guidance. That's your inner knowing. It's that deep wisdom within that isn't affected by societal pressures and cultural brainwashing and other people's opinions. It's just that deep inner guidance and wisdom. And then flow state is really optimal consciousness. It's when you're in the zone. It's when everything's just effortlessly flowing. I love to say that it's when productivity meets alignment and you sort of lose sense of time, creative ideas are connecting. That's where innovation and nuance happens. And what I found was that through breath work, we could start to clear suppressed emotions that were blocking our clarity. We could start to release energetic patterns and habitual thoughts, and we could get deeper and hear that voice inside. It was like a direct line to intuition. And then once you tap into your intuition, it's this storage of infinite information, and things start to connect really effortlessly. And you're like, oh, it's this idea with this person. Maybe I need to reach out to them. Maybe I have to send this text message. I have to have this conversation. I should post this thing. And so when you start to use your intuition in your business or in your coaching and your entrepreneurship, you start to access that flow. The intuition is around a creative task or a project. And then the next thing you know, you're creating, and it's this really exciting, euphoric feeling.
That's so beautiful. I love the productivity and alignment piece. That completely resonates with me in the way I kind of work with flow. There's also another side, which is very much surrender. It feels like that the energy of flow for me also has this sense of allowing. So as you said, not always needing to plan, not being in the head and the ego, but allowing based on the intuitive response, and also having a process that guides you towards it, which in your case is breath work. And while I love breath work, my expertise is more in sound, and I know how powerful they both are. You can't produce sound without breath. So there is such a beautiful connection in that, in creating, I will say, highway to the intuition and flow state.
Yeah. What you're saying, though, in the way that you access intuition and flow state, it sounds like you're very healed. That's what I gather when you speak about that, because a lot of people can't hear their intuition, and they don't know the difference between the intuition and the fear. And while we use maybe different modalities, what they're both doing is they're healing the second guessing. They're healing the lack of self-trust. They're healing the lack of self-worth, because those things have to be emotionally unblocked, right? For us to be able to really feel clear in our knowing and be confident enough to execute on that moving forward.
Beautiful. And thank you for bringing the attention to that, because obviously everyone is in a different place, a different stage, a different process. I'd love to know for those listening who might have had the same, well, that's great, Simone, nice. But, I find it's really hard to get into that intuitive space. What would be something that you could share so that perhaps they could distinguish between intuition and fear? Those are the kind of thing, the two words you brought up.
Yeah, in my opinion, intuition is built. We all have it, but for most of us, it's been buried. It's been diluted. We don't believe that that's actually the right thing, because our logical mind and our analytical mind starts to come in, and it makes us doubt ourselves. So in my opinion, it's when you get that nudge and you act on it right away, and you train your muscles, you train your mind and your body to do that consistently, and you make a habit out of it, then it's cultivated, it's strengthened again. So I would encourage everyone, when you get that little voice that's like, reach out to that person, tell them you love them, say that you're sorry, send that email out, do it.
Yes.
Release expectation to the outcome. This is where the surrender is involved. But again, surrender takes a lot of being able to let go of control, which is also difficult. But practice it in small acts. And when we can do like one small daily action, intuitive action step at a time, then the next thing you know, you're quitting the corporate job because it doesn't feel right in your body anymore. You're leaving the relationship. You're going after the thing that you want, and you can make space for those bigger, bold, courageous moves.
Yeah, that's super important. And I also think that on the other side of that, I think we have an opportunity. I use the word responsibility for myself, but I'll use the word opportunity to offer that feedback when others are in a state of checking in with themselves. So I'm sensing, Simone, that this is what's happening right now. That's the nudge. That's something that's come up. And then you say no when it's actually true. You go into your fear, or you don't necessarily want to share, and it kind of invalidates that current that is actually on point. So I feel that from a receiving perspective, I think, or interactive experience, that we can also really help people build their intuition through that reflection.
Absolutely. And I know that even in my journey now, I feel like I'm extremely intuitive. And as soon as I get the nudge, I move with it because I just know and I trust. And I've had enough synchronicities to help prove that concept, right? But in the beginning, it was really difficult for me. And especially when it came to finances, because I was so trained to be responsible and to have a steady income and to have the biweekly paychecks and the 401k and the bonuses. And I needed that financial security. So when I went on my journey and my whole body was like, nope, you're not going back to work. You're going to go to India and you're going to explore this modality. You're going to go back to Bali. My whole body and mind were very disconnected in that process. But that's when I really relied on the breath work to keep me very consistent in the vision and the life that I wanted to create. And so now in my practice with Hypno-Breathwork, the last vocal cue for every session we guide is, what is your one next intuitive action step? Because I know how important that clarity is, so that we have the one step in the roadmap, that we stay consistent on the higher path. And that's become really foundational in our practice.
That's beautiful. I'm going to ask you to repeat that one more time. What is your
next intuitive action step?
Beautiful. Let that land. That's incredible. And would it be, I mean, I'd love to know kind of what got, I mean, you spoke about your corporate background and then you had this calling and you went to India, you've experienced these things. What kind of prompted you then into writing this book? Like what made you think, I really need to share this for people to kind of learn from and grow through?
Yeah, I had started sort of documenting the journey because it was so fascinating for me, being an ex-New Yorker who was all in my head, very type A, high performing. And then all of a sudden I'm doing Kundalini and singing it and doing eye gazing and caressing people in India. It was like an extreme departure of what I was used to. So I was like, I have to write this down because I can't even make this up. And so as I was sort of documenting, I knew that eventually I would probably write a book about it. I felt it in my soul that that was going to be a part of my journey. But I also knew that the story was still unwritten. I hadn't learned what I needed to learn yet. And as I became a breathwork coach and I started seeing other people's stories very closely reflected to mine, where they would have sort of a spiritual awakening and then they would heal parts of their past, it would free up all of this energy for them to create new connections to their skills and their experiences, and they would start to discover their purpose. And all of a sudden, we were all going on this journey where we were finding a new level of meaning in our lives. We were finding this color and this fulfillment and this joy that was unparalleled to any one act of success or one act of achievement. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to document this because there's a methodological process. There's, in my opinion, this like chronological order in which you can be intentional about cultivating your purpose. So the book was kind of birthed through me and my own journey.
That is beautiful. And I want to talk a bit more about that, the methodology. And before I do, coming back to your title. Now, when I first read it, like the title, not the book, when I first read it, my mind said unlocking purpose. And when I read it again, it says unblocking purpose, which actually is very different. And I love that. So I'd love to know what the unblocking piece means for you in that.
Yeah. I believe that a lot of us are blocked. We have these emotional blockages that have come from subconscious limiting beliefs, from unfulfilled values, from different social pressures, from past events that have been so hurtful to us and have shaped our identity and caused us to suppress emotions and suppress our personalities and our true desires. So for me, it's a process of healing, of letting go of parts of our past, of reconciling certain relationships and unblocking that energy so that we can channel it into new creativity, into new connections, into more impact, into innovative, things that we want to bring into the world. So this process of unblocking the emotional barriers and the protective walls and the coping mechanisms that we've built up in order to unleash it to something that's greater than ourselves.
So beautiful. I completely resonate. And so let's talk a little bit then about your own experience in, you spoke about, let's go back to intuition, because I know that there's so many beautiful aspects to it. And I'm curious as to if you had any significant breakthroughs that you might have had or transformation through those intuitive nudges that you've, received or experienced in your life so far.
I have hundreds of stories about intuition that range from, say, when I had the idea to birth my company, Mastry, I saw that I had to post a headshot on Instagram and say, I'm coming out as this new female founder of a wellness company. And if you want to get on board, DM me. And my whole body and my ego was like, no way, I'm not putting myself out there on social media in that way. That's crazy. But my intuition was loud. It was like, post it now. And 48 hours later, I had 100K wired into Mastry's bank account. And I had my first, big investor to bring this idea to life. And that was from one intuitive Instagram post. And I have countless stories like that. But in order for me to get that kind of clarity, my journey really began with healing a lot of those relationships of my past. And a big one that shocked me was the relationship to my mom, because my relationship to my mom, I thought was great. My mom is an absolute saint. Anyone who meets her is like, she's an absolute angel. She's the kindest human. You can feel it in her energy and her spirit. And I thought we had a great relationship. And when I went into a breathwork session, everything else was revealed to me, how much I missed her sacrifices, how I didn't notice that she was working 3 jobs so that I didn't have to worry about financial scarcity, the way that she showed up for me. And I would dismiss her love and I would call it overbearing because I had all of this unconscious guilt repressed in my body. And when I finally saw her journey leaving Vietnam as a refugee and having me so young and surviving for me and creating this opportunity, it was the most painful, brutal, experiential, emotional process of my life. B, it created this to be a mission for me where I was like, if I thought I was self-aware and I'm having this revelation, I have to help more people heal the relationship to their mom. And that's how it started. And then C, it just freed up this energy because I was no longer carrying this buried guilt in my body. And the next thing I knew, ideas were flowing. I felt like I was having like psychic abilities. I was so clear and I was so in flow. I was losing weight. Everything started to flow in my life. And it was honestly, that was the biggest session for me, was healing that relationship and then connecting the dots on what to do next.
That is beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing so openly about something that personal. And I think it is a beautiful recognition when we can realize that it doesn't always look like there's something off on the outside, or, but when you go deeper, when you choose to go and in search of evolution and your own healing and all of that amazing yumminess that we can do, there's just so much that's revealed.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because it was truly shocking to me. I had been in therapy, I had read several self-help books, and I was like, I have daddy issues. I am super clear about that. I see my patterns and my voids and the men that I am choosing to fill that emotional intimacy void, and I'm happy to do breath work on my father, but I do not need to go into the topic of my mom. I'm good. And I'm really grateful to my spiritual teachers at the time for being like, no, we're going to go into this one.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need to. And I was really resistant. And then when I finally did, it was like, I definitely opened Pandora's box. And I know that that's the fear that most people have in doing some of the deeper work. But the reality is it lives in our body. It's stored in our body. The body does not forget, the body keeps score. And unless we're willing to shine a light on it, to release it, to feel, to heal, it's going to continue to show up in the way we engage with people, in our relationships, in the decisions that we make. So I encourage everybody to do the deep work.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I mean, I'm recently doing a workshop on shadow work, and I was speaking about that, what the shadow is, because someone said to me, I've not heard it described the way you described it, which feels very resonant with what you've just shared, which is, if you think about the definition of a shadow appears when an object is blocking the light. And so if an object is blocking the light, whether that's the light shining from somewhere there or here, and the shadow appears, there's an object. And what is the object? Often it is the shame, the guilt, the, old patterns, as you said, all of these things. And that's what we can then look at healing to remove the object, because the light's there either way. It's just that the shadow appears when something's blocking it.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful definition. And it's so resonant with how I discovered shadow work as well. And I write about this in the book, but I thought my shadow was mean girl behavior. I knew that I had shame about that in my past, and I had used it as a bit of a protective shield. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do shadow work. I don't want to, bring my shadow into breath work. This is gonna be so intense. I'm gonna have to face like my high school self. And it's not what came up at all, because what came up was buried so much deeper that my awareness could even tap into consciously. And when I went into breathwork and I explored the shadow, it was like, oh, insecurity, oh, jealousy, which is something I would never admit in any conversation, or neediness, which is something that I would never demonstrate, especially to a man. So I was like, I have these parts of me inside, it was so revealing. And when I learned to accept it and integrate the dark with the light, again, there was new clarity, there was new freedom on the other side.
Yeah, so beautiful. And it really does take a dose of courage and willingness, right?
Yeah.
I say a dose.
I know.
Not,
I'm like,
to at least be willing to look at it, and then all the things to kind of go deeper and to go there. I want to talk about purpose now, because I think you used the word mission when you spoke about your experience, and then you're on this mission to kind of bring this out in the world. And I've seen many times people interchangeably use purpose and mission. And I'd love to know, since you're using that word purpose, for you, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I would say that purpose is really the convergence of your skills, your curiosities, the obstacles that you've gone through, and then turning it outward to serve others. So for me, I feel very much that my purpose is to help people get into alignment with their purpose. And the modality I use is breath to help them unblock and get clear. When I said mission, it's just the level of conviction I had after that session with my mom, where I was like, whoa, this is not about me. Like, I've never felt so fired up. I've never felt so driven to help people, because the repair that ensued in my relationship with my mom, it still makes me so emotional to this day, because she didn't deserve to be treated that way by me. And she had to go over 30 years with just loving her daughter who never showed any gratitude for her. And how intense is that, And so for me to have apologized to her after that session and to say, I see you, and I'm so grateful for the sacrifices you made for me. And now I make such a conscious effort to spend more time with her, to have more quality experiences with her. And it's changed my life, and it's changed her life.
Yeah.
So that's why I use the word mission when I'm just describing the conviction I have for that experience, and how much ambition it gave me to bring this work into the world. But I believe for everyone else, the purpose is really about connecting the dots. It's finding the moments that light you up and what brings you joy, and exploring your curiosities. And then there's this really cool intersection that happens when you use breath or sound or get really still, and it starts to connect. And for me, it was like, okay, I have this marketing and advertising background, and that's not wasted. And that's something I really want everyone to be very clear of. Nothing is wasted. We just have to find the ways that it connects into your next venture. So I had advertising and marketing background, and then I had this really intense curiosity for breathwork and spirituality, neuroscience, psychology. And then I also really love modern technology. And so when I would breathe, all of these things would come together, and I was like, oh, I'm going to create this app. I'm going to create Mastry app. And it's going to be every topic that everyone needs. It's going to be digital. It's going to be accessible. And it's going to be the convergence of the things that I love.
I love that. Yes, I again, it's just you're speaking my language. It's so amazing. I often, for me, differentiated or still do differentiate purpose and mission with a very small nuance, and that is purpose for me is very much related to the being, and mission is very much related to the doing. And I like that you brought the conviction in, because there is a level of not just doing, but doing with conviction. How you live and bring your purpose out into the world. So there I'm kind of pulling some nuggets there, that when you phrase it, it resonates, but it's also lighting me up, because you're saying it in a different way. So it's kind of bringing some expansion. So I really appreciate that so much.
Same, because that was such a clean distinction for me. I'm like, okay, yes, stored in my memory.
That's awesome. And so this is a follow-up question, but in a way I feel that you have answered it, but I'm asking because it's the one that I know a lot of people have about purpose, and that is, does everyone have a purpose?
Mhm.
Some people think, no, not everyone has a purpose in life. We sometimes just have to get up and do this, or but does everyone have a purpose? Let's answer it from that very clean question.
I believe every single person has a purpose. I
Yes.
believe every single person has a purpose. And I think that the sooner we can go inward and connect the dots on what that purpose is and start living from that place, I honestly believe that it will solve the mental health crisis. I think right now, we're all so in our own worldview. It's a bit self-centric, but when we can learn to look outward and see how our curiosities and our experiences and our skills and our passions can actually serve others and contribute to something greater than ourselves, and we can operate from a place of giving more, I think most people will find so much more fulfillment in that process, and it'll get us out of our heads, out of our anxiety, out of our depression, and it'll create such a more compassionate and beautiful world.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that's a really beautiful, bold statement about mental health, because I do agree that these things just start with that one small step, and that starts with the inner universe into the outer world, or the microcosm, macrocosm, the individual, the collective. And I know there's so much beauty to come from that. So I really hope those listening are picking some of these things up and asking themselves how they can use breath work, get more into alignment, tap into their intuition, really connect with their purpose, and know that there is a purpose, and see how they can bring those elements more to the forefront consciously into their lives. It's so important.
I've just seen it work so many times across so many different industries, and the things that light people up are so unique and so different. But I've seen, one woman say, my biggest obstacle was being bullied in high school. And then several breathwork sessions later, she's in product development now, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to create a technology, and I'm going to bring this to high school girls, and I'm going to help them be more mindful from a young age to help end the bullying. I'm like, that's your purpose. It's connected to your story. It's connected to your work experiences now. And you're so lit up when you talk about it that it feels very clear. I worked with one producer who he does music for a very big artist. And he said, I always thought my purpose was to bring culturally relevant music to the world. And when we did breathwork, he was like, oh no, I'm supposed to help minority boys know that they can live their dreams. And so, but the music is his platform, so it's not wasted. That's where he's gaining his audience and his traction, his story for credibility. So it's none of this is wasted. It's just about getting still or breathing so that you can find those intersections and connect those dots.
I love that. Nothing is wasted. And it's such a beautiful perspective, because then it allows for that coming back to intuition. It's not about getting it right or wrong.
Yeah.
Whichever path you choose when you tap in is information, it's substance, something that you can use, because nothing is wasted, which is such a beautiful way to look at it.
Let's dive into that, because that's actually extremely juicy. Because I think sometimes when we take the intuitive action steps, especially if they're like the big, more courageous, bold ones, we expect the direct linear outcome. Well, I sent the big email, so now I'm going to get booked on that show, or like now they're going to hire me to be their coach. But it's like, no, maybe it's bringing up for you how to solidify your worth through rejection. Maybe it's making you be more creative in your pitch angles. There's so many things to learn from the experience when you act on intuition. So I think it took me a while to stop expecting the direct correlation. And now I see how compound intuitive action every day leads to much bigger things that I couldn't have predicted, that I couldn't have created on my own, but things just sync up. Oh, that one person I met 3 years ago knew that person that I met 2 days ago, and then they told them about me, and then now I'm gonna have this opportunity. So keep taking the intuitive actions, but don't have expectations with them.
I love that. And I love the word compound as well, because actually that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not linear. And I've had experiences, because I teach intuition in the sound healing trainings that I offer. And one of my students said, well, what happens? What do you do when you get this voice in your head and you're like, is this true? You know, they're picking something up around a client. There's this psychic awareness, there's the intuitions online, but there's still the voice going, hang on, is this actually happening? And the questioning is there. And I said, then that's okay. The voice is there, that's fine. And say, remember that it's just information though. Again, it's not right or wrong. It's not this is true or this is not true. It's just what is. And if we can allow ourselves to just notice and lean in, then there's so much intelligence available and resources available. So not necessarily distrusting the voice, but recognizing it's just there to help us build that muscle.
Yeah. And I'll take that to a tactical place too, is when I get those nudges or those messages and I'm not quite sure, I'm like, ooh, that felt like a direction, but I don't know, it wasn't super clear. I'll write it down. I'll write all these things in my notes. And I have a lot of these things that are like this workshop idea or this course to create. And I'm like, I don't know. And I'll write them down and then I'll take them to a breathwork session. And sometimes they're right, but the timing's not right. It's giving me a North Star, so I know what I'm working up to, whether it's qualities that I need to develop in myself or it's skills that I need to accumulate. But I remember I had this I want to say the fourth breathwork session in Bali. I had very clear messages about what was going on with my ex-boyfriend, and they were intense. Like I saw all of his demons in this session, and I came out and I was like, oh my gosh, this was never about me. It's not that he doesn't love me. He's battling with his own things across this, and this. And the teachers were like, wow, that's so powerful. I was like, oh, I have to write him a letter and tell him. And they were like, no, you can't. No. Like, they're like, you don't know for sure. I'm like, no, I know for sure. I know what I saw and I feel it. And it all feels so true to me. And I had already been drafting the letters while they're still like, maybe sit with it. And I'm just like, and I'm just writing like, I saw this in a breathwork journey and I just want you to know, like, I support you unconditionally. I love you unconditionally. If you ever want to talk about it, like, I'm here for you, blah, blah, blah. And I sent it off right away because my whole body was like so sure. My intuition wasn't second guessing or doubting. And I just remember the next morning, I got a response from him and he said, thank you for sending this letter. Everything that you shared was true. And I was like, I knew it. I'm so glad. So sometimes, go with that feeling. If you're sensing somebody needs me to check in on them, somebody needs me to say these words to them, like that's oftentimes a download or a little layup from the universe to help somebody heal or to help create an opening for them. So trust yourself if it's super loud, and if it's not, sit with it, reflect on it, breathe on it, do sound to it.
I love that so much. And actually a question is coming up based on what you said and what I brought earlier, which I'd love to know your thoughts on, which is how beautiful that you obviously felt this so strongly. It was loud and clear. You reached out, you went ahead, you had someone say no, but you knew you had to, you did it. And the response was, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
As opposed to whatever else, which is like I was talking about, no, actually invalidating the sensing and the intuition that you've boldly expressed. So my question in that then is, how do we, as the sharer, allow the intuitive current to continue into the expression or sharing of it so that we stay in that certainty, or like you knew, right? So if your partner at the time had said, no, actually, no, that's not true. I'm good. Kind of like how would you deal with that for yourself intuitively?
Yeah, I think if I really knew, like it was the truth, like I did in that day, I was not concerned about their response, because if they weren't ready, then I would have just known that. I'd been like, oh, maybe he's not willing to see that yet, but I'm here to hold the space for him. Now, again, I had a lot of conviction in that, in the way I wrote that, which is not how I would address the majority of my clients, but because we knew each other so well, we were so comfortable, I felt like I could just be direct and be like, oh my gosh, and I'm here. But normally I would ask, can I share something that's coming up for me? Let me know if this resonates for you. What I'm kind of sensing is that there might be some fear around it. Does that relate? I might pose it as a question so that they have an opportunity to be like, oh, whoa, that's really true. Or they're like, no. And then I'm like, ooh, still a little defensive, still a little raw. Like, let's dig into this. But just pose it in a way, even if you're so sure in that knowing, that's a little bit more inviting
Yes.
and doesn't put them on the defense.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you so much. And the question that I often ask my clients is, well, how direct do you want me to be?
Oh,
And because most of the time people want you to be direct, and I just ask for permission. I'm just like, I can go there. And of course, even in that sharing, I'm only sharing what I'm intuitively called to share. But at least, like you said, you know, if it lands, it does. If it doesn't, that's cool. This is just information. And it might
I
land later.
love that. No, I am obsessed because I love it the most candid, the most straightforward, the most direct. Like I am efficient with my time. I like it to be effective and results driven. So that is how I like to receive it. I've definitely learned from a lot of my coaches. I need to be a lot more compassionate in my delivery sometimes. But I have a segment in my own Hypno-Breathwork training. There on day 3, we do live coaching with me. And I'm like, listen, I have a unique style when I'm working with my one-on-one clients, because most of them, if I do privates, it's with executives, it's with high functioning alpha males, and they want it direct to the point. And so that's how I've learned to deliver it with that level of, performers and achievers. So when I'm in my certification, I'm like, if you want to step into the arena, I'm just letting you know this is gonna be a 1-2 punch.
That's right.
And they're like, and some people are like, let's go. And other people are like, nope.
She's not for me.
Exactly.
But that's great. That's exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's so beautiful. I think we'll work well together then.
I know. I'm like, oh my God.
Francesca, how direct you want me to be, Francesca? You're like, go for it. I'm like, yeah. Now give me that punch.
Oh my God, we have to do this because that would be so fun.
I think so. It'd be awesome. Oh, that's so cool. I love it. Okay, so I want to know about, because you just spoke a little bit about hypno. I know we spoke about it in your intro, Hypno-Breathwork. Speak to the hypno piece. I don't want to just go down the road of, okay, it's hypnotherapy and breathwork put together. So let's talk a little bit about that piece and what made you come up with it.
Yeah, so as I'm sure you've noticed with different, sound healers and practitioners and styles, I noticed with breath work, although it always felt really powerful and really cathartic, I just saw that there was an opportunity. There was this missing link for people when it came to integration, and by really being able to understand their intention, what psychological pattern they could break, and the experience and an action step. So I was like, it's really beautiful. But every time I go to these workshops, people are like, I don't know. I cried. I don't know what that means. And I'm like, wait, no, there's like, you could make a really direct through line of the thing you want to change. And like, I think I can do that. So I went to the hypnotherapy training and I was like, I love the subconscious reprogramming. I love these really thoughtful vocal cues that get straight to the source, straight to the root of the belief. And then we can start to add this hypnotic suggestion to reprogram and rewire it. And then I was really obsessed with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And I was like, oh, mental rehearsal and feeling the emotion ahead of the event. Like, okay. And I would practice with an EEG headband and see that in 4 minutes of conscious connected breath work, you can get into deep theta states.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, you have to be in those theta state brainwaves in order for the suggestions to be able to work on your subconscious and to access those stored memories and those emotions. So I was like, okay, I'm going to lead with breath work as the foundation to get into the subconscious and to clear the emotion. Then I'm going to bring in hypnotic suggestions so that we can get really topical, so that we can get very specific and customized on what people want to heal so they know what session they're going into. Is it an inner child session? Is it a mother wound session? Is it a creative flow state session? Is it on relationships? And then the music would reflect the words and they would pair it into that. And then the end would be all about visualization, rehearsing who you want to be, and then taking that next action step. So it was an accumulation of all of the things I found to be most effective in my own healing journey, and then packed into one very efficient 22-minute modality.
Oh, 22 minutes. Great. Wow. That's
I
incredible.
know.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, I mean, it's not a long time, in the grand scheme of things, for people to really go to, to the depths and to do the work. And I really agree, as a practitioner, sound healer, and doing all of this work, how important integration is.
Yes.
Because you can feel really blissed out from sound, but you could also feel really emotional. And not everyone is equipped to handle what's coming after, and I think that integration piece is often missing in some of these modalities. So I love that you really go direct there, and you make sure there is a support system in place in the session.
And it's really an arc. Like we're very meticulous in how we craft the journeys, and the music is extremely important and the vocal cues are very important. So it's usually a bit heavier and emotional towards the middle, but then we bring people out with a very ethereal ending of seeing their highest self and getting that clear next action step. And the action step is really the piece of integrating it into their day-to-day lives, because breathwork can be so cathartic and powerful on its own. You don't need a coach. You don't even need any music. You can just sit there and breathe, and the breath will take you to the root of an emotion and it'll be powerful. But when you have the guidance and when you know exactly what we're digging into that day, and then you have an action step, then you really have something to sustainably change your life. I did a session for a gentleman yesterday. I was on a podcast and he was like, should we do a breathwork session? And I was like, before the podcast? And he's like, yeah. I was like, it's really intense. And he's like, it's intense. I was like, well, my version is. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to do it if you want to do it. I mean, I think in like 7 minutes, he was like bawling, crying. And he came out and he's like, are you a witch? What the hell was that? I'm like, it's very meticulously crafted, like, I'm intense and I'm efficient, and that's what the modality is. So we went into it and it was really great.
That's awesome. And before the podcast, so he must have had a really interesting experience following, I think.
He was so disoriented, the mics, the camera, like everything. And he was like, you know what, I'm glad we did this because I really needed to shake things up and I needed to be off my game. And he's like, I love it. So it was good.
Yeah. Well, what a beautiful turnaround and perspective though, right? Like I can just surrender. That's the letting go of control and just being in the moment. And I think that's just the best that we can do for ourselves and other people.
Again, though, I have to say this, like your energy is so healed. Like I'm jealous of how much work that you've done on yourself, because your energy is just so calm. It's so grounded. And you've mentioned surrender several times, and surrender is such a hard place for people to get to because they want to control the process. They want to know the outcome of things. But when you live in a place of surrender, when you can be in the unknown and you can let the universe work its magic and you can co-create it with it, that's when you really start to have a beautiful life. So I just want you to know that that really comes off from you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that reflection. And I have done a lot of work. I feel very fortunate and blessed to have grown up in a very supportive, my mom used to run a lot of she had a bookstore called Metaphysical Books. So when I was in primary school, I'd go after school and read Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay. I was 9, I was 10. So I started that journey quite young. And then because though my parents I'm from the Caribbean originally, both my parents, while they had a Christian background, my mom particularly didn't feel as fulfilled in that one space. So she opened up into a more spiritual and metaphysical group space. And with that, we started meditating from quite young. So my first meditation practice started at 6, and we'd go down to the beach and have the sun coming up and spend time in meditation. So I've had a very long time in this work. And I think it's worth saying that, because it's not like I woke up one day and it's like, I really have been willing to go there because I've practiced it for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really comes through. I think as soon as we got into the Zoom, I was like, whoa, my gosh, you're like really beautiful. And you're like, oh, thanks. But your presence just feels so calm. And I think that that's really what's needed when you hold space for people, because it is inspirational and it is very aspirational for you to be in that place as you guide others. So it's felt.
Thank you. And what's interesting is that's the word that most people use, calm. Most people, when they describe my energy, they feel really calm or grounded or secure in my presence, and calm is the one that I've heard the most. So I've actually went, after a while, like, okay, so there's something calming about my energy. Oh, that's interesting. Let's lean in and see what that's about. So thank you for the reflection. I really appreciate that.
I want to be clear though, it's a calm power. It's not like to me, it's not like calm, relax. It's like calm confidence, like calm, powerful. And it's in a way that's doesn't have to be loud and in your face, but like you can feel like you're like so solid in yourself and in your worth. And calm power.
Thank you. I love those words together. I often use the words fierce compassion. So I really love that calm power too. It's like it kind of brings in what I sense I emit from time to time, or quite a lot of the time. Yeah. That is
Beautiful.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask you about flow state because I know we spoke quite a bit about intuition and I love the hypno part of the breath work. And
Yeah.
I would love to know a little bit more about flow because often it's
Yeah.
associated with peak performance. We spoke about
Yeah.
it before, or having this, the creativity side of things. Those two
Yeah.
words often come up. So I'd
Yeah.
love to know how, when you are approaching the breath work and intuition, let's say entering into this state of flow, what kind of benefits does it offer, but also talk about the flow a little bit more.
I love this question. And it came by happenstance, right? So I had just moved to LA and decided I was going to put my ego aside and I was going to become a breathwork coach. And I was like, how the hell do I become a breathwork coach? And so while I was using the breathwork to clear the emotional blocks of this transition in my career, I noticed that I would approach it very similar that I did to advertising and marketing. So I turned my bedroom into a war room. And on one page, there was spiritual benefits, psychological benefits, physiological benefits, messaging, content strategy, partnership opportunities. And I had an entire business plan on my wall. And then I would go breathe on ideas. And I would notice that that word connected to this page. And then if I reached out to that person, I saw this inspiration in this book, but then Stephen Kotler said it like this. And I would connect all these things and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to create a workshop around this. And I'm going to market it to this person. I'm going to position it to this person. And I was like, did I just get into flow state? Did I just hack flow state using breath work and having a very clear intention about a goal or business plan? And I have built my entire business. Every single thing that I've created, from my digital courses to my certification, to my app, to my book, to my retreats, to my workshops, has been created from flow state breathwork. The ideas come to me, the fonts, the colors, the style, the pricing, the packaging, every single thing, all of my marketing comes from breathwork. And I don't do anything unless it comes through in breath. So I scaled my business in this way. Every idea, this is the topic, this is the playlist, ask this question, reach out to this person. They all were downloads that came through in my practice. And then I said, can I take other people through this? If I have a really specific intention and topic, if I have them brainstorm on strategy or whatever the industry is, can I customize it so that I can get teams and corporate into flow state? And so that's what I would do. I would go look at the company mission. I would talk to their senior lead about what's the project that's coming up. What do we need ideation around? Where is their collaboration needed? Do we need to release stress first? Do we need to connect people back to the gratitude of the job and to teamwork? And I would get their goals. I would customize my hypnotic suggestions. I would play more trance, like ethereal, upbeat music. And then I would lead a brainstorm and then take people into flow state and they would come out and they'd be like, this is the idea. Oh my gosh, we're all on the same page. I feel so excited. I feel so euphoric. Creative energy is flowing through me. And I was like, wow, we can hack this through a very specific journey. I know, I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, do you want me to do this for your business? Because we can. You'll have
I'm just so excited. Well, you probably could see all the things going, sparks going off. That's why I was like, ooh, breathwork marketing, sonic this, breathwork that. I think we're gonna have to collaborate. I'm just so excited.
I know. It's so good. And now, I mean, I've done this, I do this with a lot of CEOs. The one that's coming through for me right now is during COVID, I was working with this CEO and he was like, I think I'm going to have to do layoffs, or I think I'm going to have to raise money again. Like, these are my two solutions right now. And I said, well, let's breathe on it and let's see. And in the breath work, it was like, nope, I'm going to actually be really transparent with my employees about where we are and see who's willing to take a temporary pay cut. And then I'm going to tap into my PR company and ask them to elevate this. And then I'm going to strip from this. And he had all these nuances in his business about how to optimize and extend their runway. So flow state is like creative solution, it's tapping into the infinite intelligence. It's getting out of the default mode of how you think things are supposed to be, how your competitor did it, how you did it last year in your past experiences. And it's being able to access and stimulate different regions of your mind so that you can get more creative solutions.
That is so beautiful. Yeah, but that's great. It's really good because for me, a lot of the work that we do in this world, especially when we go into intuition or flow or purpose, these parts of things that people don't always understand, it's super important to ground it and make it practical and accessible. And so I think that story is great because it's super clear that almost no matter the challenge, but here in your work, in your business, you can bring this in to help you get into flow, to help that creative juice to flow and the ideas to be in that optimal consciousness, which I love the words that you brought earlier. So I love the tangent, more of that.
Well,
and
we
actually,
can. Oh yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say we can bring in a little bit more of like the science and the physiology to it too, for those who like a bit more of the practical sense. And what's happening in your body is you're changing the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So what's happening is you're starting to quiet down the prefrontal cortex, and that's the analytical mind. Those are the default thought loops, and that's when you're starting to stimulate the subconscious. And you and I know that the subconscious is the record holder. That's where all the memories, that's where all the information, that's where all the infinite intelligence lives. And so when we can slow down the prefrontal cortex, we can start to activate those different regions. We access the subconscious. That's where things start to connect. And that's where the vocal cues, you're breathing. And then I'm saying to you, I want you to see the launch. I want you to start to allow some marketing ideas to come to the surface. Start to see your audience. What do they need today? What is it going to feel like to have your program full? What's the next action step towards that goal? Boom, 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 boom. Things start to connect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And just to pick up on the language that you used, because it was the question that was coming next. So you kind of answered it, but not necessarily everyone's going to hear what I'm hearing, which is you're using all the senses. How do you feel? What do you see? What do you hear? You're using them all, because when we do access those inner states, it's not always visual. And I've had people go, well, am I doing it wrong? If they're not getting the same kind of response from the intuitive nudge, or going through breath work or sound and what's coming up. It's like there's no wrong way to do it. So the question I had was, in your actual method and how you approach it, do you speak to that piece, the senses, and the specifically around visual or auditory or things like that?
Yeah, everyone's experience is different. And no two experiences are the same too. Even if you do breath work every day, every single session is going to be different for you. Sometimes they are more visual. Sometimes it's just a message that's dropping in. For some people, their first 3 sessions might only be physical. They don't get any images or messages because they've had so much stored up stress and anxiety that needs to be released before they can be clear vessels to receive anything more than that. For some people, it's just emotional. They're like, I don't know, I just cried. I'm like, then you needed to cry today, before we need to unblock a little bit before we can get those images. For some people, they only see color, but they have some clarity around, well, I saw myself on a stage in this suit. I'm like, great, that's the North Star. So what's the one action step towards that? And the interesting thing that's come up for me recently in sessions I've guided is been doing a lot of business flow state workshops, and their next intuitive action step has been to forgive my sister. And I'm like, that's blocking you. And people don't see the correlation between their personal life and their relationships and their business success, but it's interconnected. If you have an energy leak in one, it is going to impact the other. So we think that we're master compartmentalizers, but we're not. The subconscious mind does not work that way, So your experience will be different, but every time you unblock something, you'll get that next hit of clarity, whether it's words, whether it's color, whether it's just tingling in your hands, that can have meaning. So just pay attention to what's going on in your body, and we kind of dissect that together post-session.
That's so cool. I love it. I definitely connected with you at this time for a reason. I can't wait for that to land. It's already percolating. This is beautiful. So as you're talking about some of the blocks, because we did speak about things being not, everyone having different experiences and so on. What are some in your work so far of the most common challenges that people encounter when they're trying to unblock their purpose, to step into that beautiful space, and how do you help them address them?
Yeah, there's 2 that are the most common, because I track a lot of the intentions for pattern recognition. And for men, it's the uncertainty. They are really wired to know. And I think specifically when they have the additional pressure to provide for a family, it is extremely hard for them to trust the unknown, for them to not control the outcome, for them to not believe in what's unpredictable. So there's a lot of massaging and really unraveling that. And it's the same thing. I tell them the same thing, which I tell women who, for them, the number one thing is self-doubt. It's a lot of losing trust in yourself or having actually never been maybe empowered to hear your own voice and to execute on it. So self-doubt and the fear of uncertainty are the most common blocks that I see in intentions. And the solution is the same. It's one intuitive action step at a time. One intuitive action step at a time. Because for self-doubt, you start to trust yourself, you start to build that muscle, you start to believe again. You only need to hear your own voice. And same thing for the guys. It's like you take out one step, you might notice some synchronicities. The universe might reward you. That might give you enough fuel to do your next intuitive action step. And if you just start with one little intuitive action step at a time, it will compound. And when you make that a habit, then you're really being intentional in creating the life that you want.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I think that one intuitive action step at a time is I'm going to have to put that quote for you, because to me, the intuitive action piece is, I mean, all of it is, but the intuitive, because often like, what's your next step or what's one action you can take, but what's the next intuitive action step to me is so beautiful. I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours. I could talk to you for hours. But I am going to round us up here, and I'm going to ask you if there's one thing that your readers and those listening can get from your book. What is that one thing that you would love people to take away? Well, I'm sure there are many.
It would be to act on your intuition. It would be to listen to your intuition and then fiercely execute on it.
Fiercely execute, all these amazing words. You're very well spoken, Francesca, because I think you're really using some deliberate and intentional words. So I really, really love this. I can't wait to kind of pull some beautiful nuggets out. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining. Thank you for you, all that you are. I celebrate you, the release of your book, and all you're doing to help us to unblock our purpose and really just step into our power. I'm so grateful for you.
I'm so grateful for this conversation. And again, you have the most beautiful energy, and I'm so excited I got to spend my morning with you.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you one final question that I ask all of my guests. That is, what is your soulful sound to the world, a prayer or desire that you wish upon the world?
I'm going to keep doubling down. I'm going to keep reinforcing this one. It is act on your intuition. You do not need to listen to the advice and the stories and the limiting beliefs of anybody else. You just need to trust your own knowing, and then you can be unapologetic and taking action on it.
Aho. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you love this episode, hit that like and subscribe button and make sure to check out our other episodes. Thanks so much for being with us today, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.